Hit the lights!
You've discovered the Half Watt Podcast. We want to educate and entertain by tapping into the most trusted source of new technology, the ones installing and innovating it. You, the tradespeople that build from the ground up. Join us as we talk with industry leaders, veteran contractors, and even some young blood.
Welcome aboard. Today we're talking with Isaac Coverstone. Hi, Isaac.
How's it going?
Pretty good. So Isaac, we were just chatting before the show. Isaac actually has his own podcast. What's the name of your podcast, so you can at least plug it here?
Yeah, it's just called Naked Pentecostalism.
Naked Pentecostalism, for all you people who are into naked Pentecostals.
And I basically stole the idea from Naked Mormonism, who is a very successful podcaster. I actually sent him an email and I said, hey, is it okay if I kind of take the same tagline? He's like, yeah, go for it.
I listened to that podcast when it started. I actually was one of the folks that found that right off the bat. Listened to probably a year's worth of it. Loved it.
Yeah, it's a fantastic show.
Really good show. I like those guys.
So I certainly can't hope to match their quality, but, I'm just kind of doing my own thing. It's just me, a microphone, and I just let it go.
Nice.
So I don't have this level of setup you guys have, but
yeah, this is a really nice studio.
It is. I'm very jealous.
This is nicer than my house.
Yeah, a little bit.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you for coming in today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So tell me about yourself. So you're an LEA, and you currently work for Stanley.
Right.
And so how did you get in the industry? What was your passion? What was your drive?
Yeah, and like we were talking before the show, I was basically doing random jobs, right? I was a forklift driver. I was working as a teller at Bank of America, and
you do.
Yeah, just kind of, you're a young kid, you don't really know what you're doing, you're just trying to find a job. And so me and a couple other friends, we were all about the same age, and we were all realizing, hey, we're getting nowhere. We need to get a real career going.
Sure.
So we looked at another mutual friend of ours, and we're like, this guy's got a Hummer H3, and he's got a house, and he's married, and he's really got it together. We should just do whatever he's doing. Well, he was doing fiber splicing for Verizon, or something like that. And so we're like, let's get into that electrical thing. And then we just literally picked a career and we stabbed at it. And all of us are still doing it today.
So you have other folks that you came into this industry with.
Right.
Did they work for Stanley, or are they?
So one of them works for Point Monitor right now, Jordan Hads. He's the lead of their controls division, basically project manager. I've known Jordan since early high school, I think. So we've always, again, we kind of all hung out together. We were the crew.
Yes.
And then Joseph Ray is I believe he's working for Reese right now. And he actually worked for Stanley for a little bit, but I think he bounced around a little bit like I did. And so
we all do.
yeah. And so it was very much kind of this mutual decision. We were all just going to pick an industry that we thought looked good, and we dove into it, and we never looked back.
Nice.
And it worked out really well.
And are you driving an H3?
I'm not. Funny story, I actually don't have a car right now.
Really?
Because right now I'm in an apartment and you get one parking spot,
Yeah,
so
I know how that
so
goes.
the service van's out in the street. My girlfriend's car is going to be in the spot. So if I have another vehicle, it's just going to we have to rotate it around. So the used car market was at the peak this last early half of this year, and I actually sold my car for 15% above Blue Book.
Yeah.
And I was like,
that's a good call.
Why
You
not?
get rid of the thing.
And I'm going to save on insurance and whatever, and I don't have to deal with moving it around and storing it.
Hey, when I went through a divorce, I thought very seriously about just getting a bike, and I was already biking at that time, but
And then
just
your
bike
wife can't
only,
get it,
and just live in an area where I could bike to work all the time. And that's not exactly how it worked out for me. I wound up getting remarried, but I still bike. And I still bike up to the hill, and it helps keeps my, blood pressure down. And
oh yeah, that hill's no joke.
yeah, I love it. It's good. So you've worked for quite a few companies, and we know folks in the industry together. We just haven't. Matter of fact, before the show we were talking, and we had probably almost brushed paths because you were just turning out as I started teaching at IEC. So.
Right.
You had Mario as a fire instructor. I didn't take over fire for another couple of years, and I took over from Andrew. I think right about the time that you were probably graduating.
Probably.
Right in that area. I took over from Andrew and started teaching specialized controls. So we just happened to miss each other. But you would work for Siemens, so you worked with Charles. And I knew him and obviously pretty big fan of his. So
yeah, Siemens was really an interesting experience because it was very much a love-hate relationship, where it was a great environment to be in. I think it was a really, I felt like I was home there. And it's kind of weird to say that, as a company, to say, oh, it felt like you were comfortable there, but that's really the atmosphere that they had. Was everyone was really chill. Most of the time everyone got along, everyone was trying to work together. And I think the big part of it was just, everyone really had this attitude that we're going to be friendly, we're going to be chill, we're going to work towards helping the customer. And I stayed there for about 3 years, and the only reason I left was I was chasing a bigger paycheck. Sure. And I think the really funny thing about Siemens was they gave you a huge amount of just autonomy. You could just do whatever you wanted. They didn't, half the time, again, after Charles left, there was a lot of churn in leadership. And so in 3 years, I had 3 different managers that I reported to, 3 direct supervisors, and I had 3 branch managers rotate out. So there was actually periods of time where I had no boss. It was just kind of, hey, do whatever. But on top of that, we had a turnover with our service coordinator position. And most of the time, they were busy with HVAC coordinating. Right. So, Siemens security, they didn't put a lot of emphasis on, and I was security service at that time. So most of their emphasis is on fire and on HVAC and controls.
As a matter of fact, I work with one of the HVAC guys who left. He'd been there for 22 years, Eric, and he now works up on the hill. Right. Programming Desigo, which was the one that came after Apogee. Yep. And so, it was weird because I go on the other side of the cubes from me, and it's all a bunch of Siemens guys. And plus, Jason Thalen worked there for years ago. Mike Bandy worked there years ago. Those guys went up on the hill, and so there's like all these people that I've known in the industry that I've kind of crossed paths with at one time or the other.
It's a very small world, and that was kind of cliched to say that. And then coming up through the industry over the years, I was like, it's very true. It's a very small world, and eventually everybody after you work for 3 or 4 companies. You're going to rub shoulders with the same names. And
you are, and if you stick your thumb in the wrong eye, it follows you. I've definitely burned a few bridges that I didn't mean to, and have made some critical errors in judgment, and I've also, not. I've also said, well, it is what it is. Yeah. I wish I could say I lived a perfect work life, but that's bad squeeze. I'm like anybody else. You get fed up and tired, and you want to change and do something. The only thing I've been this consistent in I've just been in 1 or 2 disciplines, where I never got into the security, never got into the access control, never got into the cameras. And part of me is like scratching my head going, I think I should have. And then part of me is like, I haven't figured out all of fire yet, so I'll just stick with that.
Right. I very much enjoy being a jack of all trades. To me, that's the excitement of what gets me out of bed in the morning is I get to work on something new today, and there's a new challenge, and it's because of the way Stanley kind of absorbed other businesses. They absorbed Sonatrol, they absorbed.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so Sonatrol is technically, they're still a separate company. It's kind of a weird relationship. So when we go into a Stanley, we go into a Sonatrol customer. They've got a panel. They've got Sonatrol monitoring. We call Sonatrol, and it's their account, but we give them our passcode. We log into the site with our service ticket, but it's entire. We can't see their signals. We can't.
So who is Pacific? Because I see Sonatrol, and there's also like another company that's alongside with them is Pacific something or other.
I'm not sure how that whole relationship is because I've only been there 4 or 5 months, so I'm still kind of picking up all the pieces. But I know at some point there were 2 different Sonatrol companies. So I think what you're saying is there is another Sonatrol Pacific, and they're kind of separate from the other Sonatrol, and so it gets really confusing because they each have their own kind of districts that they operate in, and I think Stanley operates both of them or controls both of them, but I'm not completely sure, because I've called the central station for Central Pacific, and they've acted like, no, we have no idea what that account is, and it's not ours. And so I think there is actually a separation there. Okay. And what's funny is there's still Central trucks running around.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I see them all the time.
And they don't work on, they're not installing for us. They're Central. So it gets to be really bizarre.
Long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I was working at a place called Rent Track at the building, which was up by the airport, and it was a VHS tape. I mean, they were like the Blockbuster kind of thing,
right?
So they had all these VHS tapes that they rented out or what have you. So I was working there. I set the system off, and it was a security system, and the fire side was being monitored by that security side. And when I set it off, I didn't realize that I was going to set off the Central system as well. So I'm sitting in the lobby of this place, and I'm talking to this operator on the phone, and I can hear myself through her connection.
Right, because the microphones.
Just like this, right, I can hear myself. I'm going, is that me talking? She goes, yeah, that's you talking. And I said, what? And she goes, that microphone on the wall. And this thing's like 25 feet away or 20 feet away.
They've got good
and I'm
quality
like, you've
stuff.
got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
And she goes, no. She goes, it's so good. I can tell if someone's broken in and is walking, across the room. Like, we can tell if someone's actually broken in. And
right.
that way we verify that we've actually got a legit reason to, call the cops or whatnot. And I was just sitting there because, I'm just not a security guy. I'm just this fire monkey going, hear a voice on phone from lady on talking with, hey, Mick, stop. Thags say Mick, stop.
And that's the big selling point of theirs. Yeah, it's let's just cover your place on microphones, and everyone thought that's a great idea, And nowadays,
which nowadays it's not, right? Well, nowadays we all have our cell phones, so we're all stuck covering
right.
microphones.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how that goes, but. Yeah, and now it's getting worse because now Securitas bought us out. So now it's going to be changed again, and we're going to be slowly doing that merger and adjusting to that in the next couple of years.
No kidding.
So
Stanley doesn't own it anymore. Securitas.
Right. So Stanley wants to go back to making drills.
Tools.
They just want to do that. So they actually got rid of their automatic door business, their Stanley healthcare business, and Stanley security.
No kidding.
They chopped all of it out. I think they went to 3 different companies, and they just said, you know what, we want to get back to our core business, and I think it'll be a better move because we're going to a company that's focused on security, not a company that just kind of does it on the side and they meddle.
No, Securitas, I mean, and they had a history as well, but Securitas been in they're like Pinkertons, they've been around a long time.
Right.
But they've been around in other names, so. And
it's funny because I had a fairly negative experience with Securitas, probably 2013, 2014. No, it would have been after that. It would have been like 17. So the first Cracker Barrel came in Tualatin, right around that time period, and so I built that whole system. That was we were subcontracting for Securitas, and so that was with Applied Technical Systems, and they came out there and we put in a DMP and I think a Silent Night, and so the fire marshal comes out for the final, and it's Securitas monitoring, and we set it off, and she goes, "Don't put it in test. You wait till they call out." And so we're sitting there, we're watching, we're counting down, and the phone call comes through. They get the radio call. She's like, "Okay, that was a little slow, just a little slow. Let's do it one more time." And it was, it was maybe 60 seconds, and they wanted to pare it down to 45 seconds or something like that. So we ring it a second time, and that's where the problem hit. Securitas had a policy in place. I don't know if they still do. I hope they don't. If they get 2 alarms and it's not in test, but it's the same zone, same premises, they disregard the second alarm automatically.
Which is actually smart in some regards,
Sure.
because they've already called out once.
And they just want to minimize. They will call the premises.
Yeah.
They will still contact the business. They just don't dispatch automatically.
But they're not going to dispatch out on.
But you could imagine the fire marshal was a little pissed when you see that live, and they're like, they never got the call, and they're just like, well, you're failed, and they checked the box and walked out, and it took a week of emailing the central station, getting screenshots saying they got the traffic, doing the test again, and it was such a furball, and and you're fighting, emailing back and forth, and you're trying to figure out, is it something I did wrong? What happened? Is it not transmitting?
It's all in the central stations, and this whole thing now, like with BOEC. Have you had your issue? Have you dealt with BOEC yet at Portland?
That does not ring a bell.
So Portland's 911 center is called BOEC.
Okay.
Bureau of BOEC, Bureau of Emergency Communications, and they're great folks, but they changed their software on their like how they handle calls when they come in. There was a piece of software somebody wrote, they bought it, they put it in, and so it sort of triages as you're going through the call tree, so that the calls get routed different. Plus they're understaffed. Plus there's an abundance of calls coming in. So when I was working at PSI, we had a school catch fire. Sprinkler system went off, puts fire out. The monitoring company called Portland, got put on hold. Called the RP. He shows up, shuts the sprinkler system off, begins to overhaul the fire. So he's been there for close to half an hour before anybody ever gets to call him, and the fire department shows up because what the hell are you guys doing here? So they came back, and my guy who at PSI, John, who was working mostly with monitoring accounts, said this is an issue, and I thought that must be a one-off. Not a one-off. It's been happening over and over and over again. So they know they got an issue. They're doing their best to solve it. And I had a kid that worked for me at PSI who is a dispatcher there. So I'm not trying to stick my thumb in their eye. The dispatchers are doing what they're supposed to do.
Right.
It's taking a while for them to process everything that's going on. Mm-hmm. And of course, in a commercial account, when the fire rolls, they got to roll a truck. It's a zoo. It's a zoo. And to me, it's like, oh my God. I thoroughly understand where Securitas is like, bat squeeze. This is a repeat. I'm not going to send somebody out to this,
Yeah.
But
it just makes you look bad when you're standing in front of the inspector.
And TVF&R's got a different look at it, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's a whole different cup of tea. So they're going, no, we don't want that. We want it to go this way. So every jurisdiction's a different world.
Right. Speaking of central stations and dialers and that kind of thing, probably my biggest horror story in the industry, the biggest project that got unloaded on me and I had to struggle with it, was at Siemens. Mm-hmm. And there was a very large customer with a campus of multiple buildings, let's say. I'm going to say about 14 or 15 good-sized buildings, very well spread out, huge campus. And they wanted to migrate to Desigo. They wanted all their buildings to be on this nice, beautiful digital world. But currently all their buildings were on POTS, and there's no way to make all these POTS connections dial into Desigo. You have to have it all digital. Mm-hmm. So they said, hey, buddy, why don't we have you out there and put in a Bosch D6100 central station receiver?
What could possibly go wrong?
Sure. And nobody at our branch had ever installed one. They had no idea how to troubleshoot or anything. They're just like, go figure it out. You're good. And so
is that a DACR then? That's just a receiver?
It's just it's a silver box. It's a very small silver box. Mm-hmm. It's smaller than a lot of DVRs. And it just sits in a little rack. You plug in one data connection, and it pulls at everything from all these receivers. So they use like a Bosch, was it the B250? Mm-hmm. Is your little, so we put one B250 on every fire panel, and one on every, basically your HVAC controller. Mm-hmm. And so they wanted 2 receivers in every building talking to this one receiver. Okay. And that wouldn't be a huge deal. That's doable. So we'd go around, we'd install these Bosch, we'd make sure the network was talking. And you can do those 250s in like 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. You plug in, pull up your telnet, you can do the whole thing in no time flat. But they had one IT guy that ran the entire campus. And half the time, those internet connections weren't working. We'd have to troubleshoot, and then it would be a two-day wait to get him over there to fix it. Well. And at the same time, I'm doing security service for the entire Portland metro area. Mm-hmm. I'm the only security service person for all of Siemens. And I'm also doing this big project. And so I'm juggling those around, and they wouldn't give me any support. There was no... hey, I'm like, I could use a second person to help with troubleshooting the IT and programming.
Right, and that's not, that's easier done with.
Like, I have to personally drive to their main server room. I have to program something in the receiver. Then I have to drive to the other building, troubleshoot and figure out why it's not talking. And this is a product I'm not familiar with, so I'm learning on the go. And so I'm driving back and forth. And I did that for 6 months, and it just drug on and it drug on. And what makes it worse is the customer had their own proprietary software that we couldn't touch. We couldn't even troubleshoot it. Our Bosch receiver would just forward the information to their software, and that's what populated the guard's computer, and it would show all the signals. So we basically had to bring in the third-party manufacturer for that and have them troubleshoot their software after we confirmed our hardware was good. So we're talking 3-way phone conferences once a week, once a month.
What
and so
a nightmare.
And what makes it really funny is, and again, I would talk to my supervisor, be like, you know what, I could really use a second hand, because if let's worst case scenario, something happens to me and all this information's gone. What was really funny is my Siemens laptop had all these security blocks where it wouldn't let me connect to that server. So we had to go to Best Buy, get another little cheap Chromebook. We got a little $300 HP Chromebook, and we used that to all the programming. So, you needed to make sure this laptop didn't die because, that's the link to everything.
I know exactly how you feel.
And so here's the best part of the story, though. We get this thing 90% done. We got all the receivers in. They're talking. There was issues with the account numbers. We were trying to get the database for the old account numbers to talk to the new account numbers because they had to get changed. The new receiver wanted 4-digit account numbers, but some of the old account numbers were started with two zeros, so it would drop off and you couldn't program it, so we had to start over. And then I decided, you know what, I'm done. I want to go work for another company. I was going to get $4 or $5 an hour raise, $2,000 signing bonus. It was like, I'm going for it. And so they handed me this other technician who was a fire tech, and he's like, we're going to give you half a day. You guys go out there and let them know, get them caught up on everything you're doing. And so we sat down and we got maybe half an hour into it. So we're talking maybe a little longer than we've been talking, and he's just staring at me like his eyes glassed over.
Yeah, no, I get it.
He said,
I completely get it.
He said, I've got four or five other projects going. I can't do this, and he was about ready to quit himself. Like, he's like, I can't do this. And I was like, sorry, man, this is Siemens. It's sink or swim. You go. And so, and I dumped everything on his lap. I said, here's a little thumb drive. Make sure the Bosch won't talk unless you plug in this thumb drive. And from that point on, I looked back. I did not look back. I was just like, I'm gone. And they had, as far as I know, they had a couple other guys that helped out with security service, and they chipped in. But most of Siemens is tied up in Intel or Genentech, and so they really didn't have anybody free to take that position, so they had their 2 weeks warning, maybe more than 3 weeks, because I dropped some hints and I said, hey, I'm going to be gone. You guys need to fill this in. And there was a lot of customers that, jumped ship because they weren't getting, any help after
it happened. It really does happen. And what's bizarre is I work for a company and I had several clients, and when a couple of them left before I left that company and moved over to Performance. And then when I moved to Performance, they're like, oh, great, we're glad you're here because we worked with you there, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, well, okay, hopefully I'll be able to do the same level of service that I was doing before. Well, I was the tech before. Now I'm the manager weasel.
Right.
How, so you put on a different hat. Now I'm sending technicians out, making sure that they're doing their best to, support the customer, which can be a crapshoot. It depends on who you send, depends on the personality, depends. We'd hired a whole bunch of really good guys, so it wasn't difficult. But when you sit back after the years I'd been in and out of management and in and out of the service game and stuff, and look back at it, there is a real need for understanding by upper management what the hell is going on.
Right.
Like who's out on the field, who's deployed where, what's going on. Some managers are intuitive, they'll pick that up. And upper management may or may not recognize that, and sometimes they don't. And the the problem is when you are doing your best to say, hey, I've really got this issue. I really need someone to pick up the ball and run with it. Mm-hmm. And they either put the right technical expertise or the right, supervisory support in there to handle it, or they don't. Right. And that's the hard part, is to watch the face planting. Like you go, well, I'm going to take my hands off this. It's my turn. Crash. And it's just, you could have seen this coming,
Yeah, and I think that's what makes the difference between a good company and a bad company, is how well do they mesh the management and the techs and keep everybody flowing. Yep. When I worked at Johnson Controls, it was hectic. Mm-hmm. They had some weird dispatch issues. Every morning call, they'd say, okay, we're going to change the schedule. So-and-so's going here. No, you're going here. And it got a little messy, and that was always frustrating to kind of have to figure out where you're going the day of. Right. Like, hey, I need to know I'm going to Bend yesterday so I can get my parts on the way home. I can leave early and get there. No. You'd figure it out 8:30 in the morning. Oh, we need to go to Bend. Oh, it's like, oh, great. Now we need to drive to the shop.
Dude, I worked for a company one time where you the night before you'd look and see where you're going. Then you show up the next morning and it's all been rearranged. Yeah. All the.
That was Johnson Controls. Yeah.
And I read a book once that my boss, my former boss at OHSU, said I had to read. And it was Who Moved My Cheese. And I read the book, and it was great. And it was like, be fluid, be ready to deal with stuff. And I'm a former military guy, so I get it. I get it. Nothing works the way you expect it to work. I totally get it. But some of this crap is preventable. It's just preventable. You know what I'm saying? And other times you just suck it up. And I've got I can be pretty tolerant until I'm not. And then it's like, okay, now I'm flipping desks. I can't take this crap anymore. And that's where I start to notice that why is my bandwidth so narrow? What's going on with me personally that I'm not able to deal with this right now? And my crew around me generally can pick that up. Like this morning I walk in and I'm bent out of shape about something. The guy, did you drink your coffee today? Well, that sucks, But I have to agree that if I can, when I was running what I was running and running the people I was running, I would do my best to make sure that the right technicians in the right place at the right time, but also understood that when I had to move the deck chairs in the Titanic, that there was a reason for it. And the one thing I tried to do my best was to explain to my technicians exactly why I'm having to change stuff. Not that you were going to go to Bend, now you're going to go to Redmond. Why? This is why. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And that's where part of that's coaching. Like let me explain why you're not going to be on the field in this position. You're going to be in this position today, and work with me on that. That communications is key. It is absolutely key. And without that communications, you're dead. You're just completely dead. And that's where companies fail. That is where they fail miserably.
Absolutely.
When they don't communicate.
And that's what I like right now about Stanley is I feel like everything moves pretty fluidly. Mm-hmm. I feel like out of all the places I've worked, they really have the dispatching down to where you pull out your phone, 4:00 p.m., you're going to know where you're going tomorrow.
Right.
And that usually is not going to change. So you go en route to the site, bam, and everything.
Is that your own software? Is that like Stanley software, or is it like Service Trade or something? Or
they call it Astea.
Oh, Astea. I'm familiar with that. Western states had it. Yeah.
That's pretty much what. Now that's not going to be what Securitas is going to use.
No, of course not. No.
We will get that perfected.
Once you get everybody trained on how to use this crap, let's just change it.
Yeah.
And let's take all the guiding wheels off and put, square blocks on, and then wonder how come it doesn't work.
And honestly, they're only using it for tracking labor towards the jobs, but then they use a different timesheet app. And eventually, I think the goal is we're going to try and mesh everything into one, but that's like down the road a ways.
Super fun.
Right. But I think, so I enjoy, like, everyone kind of, we've got a pretty good system where it moves quick, it moves smooth, you get the jobs knocked out. For me, that adrenaline rush, close out the job, the customer's happy, it's done, you just get signed off and you're out. Like, there's a brief euphoria, you've solved it, and then you get the adrenaline rush, what's coming up next, and that's what that pacing is. So I've done new construction, and for me it was always like, I'm going to be doing the same thing today that I did yesterday. I'm going to be doing the same thing today. And some people thrive on that, I
like to pull wire. Today I'm going to pull wire, more wire than I pulled yesterday.
And that was the way it was at Dyna. It was like, today we're going to do 8 hours of putting string and conduit, and that was it.
Yep.
And so, and
you become really good at it.
Right.
Like you get so specialized, you get really, really good at it. Like I can pull string anywhere. Great. I'm the wizard of sucking string through a piece of metal pipe. Hey, Mike here. I just want to do a quick shout out to all of our listeners. Now listen, it's been a wonderful couple of months getting the show moving, and we have seen a ton of growth, right? You guys are doing your part. People are downloading. You're telling people. That's super important to get this podcast on the map, okay? We've got good lineup of folks coming in the studio, and the biggest thing that I want you to know is that I want to hear from you. You, the person listening to this. All right. You want to be a part of this show. You want to talk about tips and tricks. You want to talk about things that you're learning in the trade. You want to talk about how this has changed your life. You want to talk about stuff like that. Send me an email. Okay. It's halfwattpod@gmail.com. And I'm interested in hearing about people who are in the union, and people who are not in the union, and people who are technicians, and people who do alarm work, and people who do camera access work, stuff like that. It doesn't just have to be fire alarm monkeys. It could be anybody. All right. So let's talk about this so that people can realize that this is a career that will change their life.
There's maybe a little bit of ADHD to it where, I'm going to get completely bored if I don't work on camera, fire, and security in the same day. Like my brain is going to get completely zoned out, and I'm going to sit in my van and play games if I don't have something to engage me and keep me going.
I think it's what matches your personality, because I know folks just like you that are like, no, I can't just do one thing. Like all I do is one thing. Like that's all I do is one thing.
I'll quit. Yeah.
And I'm like, what blows me away is that about the time I think I'm good at this one thing, I'll hit the wall and realize I feel like a novice. What the hell is going on here? You know, I'm dealing with one of these issues at work on a simplex system that I get it all programmed. I turn it on, and it's not working right. I'm like, what the hell did I do wrong? And there's all these little tiny steps. Where did I miss? What did I miss? How did I miss it?
One little logic gate that was backwards.
One statement that didn't go right that, you went and or, and you're like, well, but that's all it. But when I step back and look at it from afar and go, hey, come on. I mean, we've driven this thing pretty far, and my predecessor drove it pretty far. And, I'm nitpicking over one little tiny thing when overall this behemoth is operating super efficiently. And here I am pissed off at this. Stupid thing not working. Pseudo point. Hate pseudo points. It's all ridiculous. It's all bat squeeze. It's like you get so, and I teach this stuff, so I realize when I get, narrowed in, and I get that tunnel vision, that if I don't recognize my own
fanaticism.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like Siemens, I saw quite a bit of the fire mess, because Siemens, the worst thing about it was they love to change. We're going to put a different cable for this version of the panel, and we're going to have a different version of the software, and you'll have 7 versions of the software for the same panel, but you have to use the right revision to talk to this one, or it's going to goof things up. And so I think the biggest area that Siemens suffered in that pissed off all the techs was basically they would not train us correctly. So we would face. They had this great software they rolled out. It was designed for helping to test systems. You plug into the panel, and you hook up the software, and it would allow you to connect your phone to your laptop and control the fire panel. It's a great idea. And
a great idea.
I think a lot of different companies each came up with their own version of it and all that. But Siemens, I mean, they could not make that software that they made talk to their panels. So we would have the brand new Desigo panel, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's so nice! Ooh, it's so slick!" And we could not make the software work. And so we had these two guys. They were the what they called the Zines. These guys were the brains of this particular software, and they came out to teach us a class. We had the entire service crew out there. There's 8, 9 techs. And me, for some reason, I'm sitting out there going, I'm a security guy. Why am I watching the fire stuff? But I kind of did both, so it made sense. And they could not make this software talk to the Desigo panel, and they tried for close to an hour. And our guy, one of our fire guys that does a lot of the big hospitals, John Walton,
I know John.
He's a great guy. He's been there 20 years, and he's helping the two guys teach their class. Like, oh, yeah, in this case, we need to do this, blah blah blah. And then we're just sitting there like, wow.
That's like Gary Youngberg who's going, look, stop what you're doing. This is how it works. Get out of the way. Especially like at Intel when they were doing EST. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That was a huge loss when they lost that product line and had to,
And they almost lost Genentech because Siemens still has the fire system at Genentech, but they tried to use the fire testing software, and it bugged out and it set off the entire building.
Oh,
yeah.
They don't. The fab plants don't like that.
Genentech
get all uppity about that when everybody on the bunny suit's sitting out in the parking lot.
We were shut down for 22 minutes, and that cost us $8 million. Is that cash check or is that going to be a wire transfer?
Yeah.
And they were not really joking.
No, Simplex. When I worked at Simplex, they Vocker Celtronics a couple times got evacuated, and man, they were not happy. They were like, this is like X thousands of dollars per minute. We don't do this. Make sure that you get your crap together. And I get it. I mean, and now, even at the hospital, you obviously don't want to ring the bells and surgeries and, places where medical procedures are happening.
Right.
Just want to control things a little bit better than that. And
so that's where fire makes me a little nervous because there's so much. So what really turned me off from fire and kind of drove me out of that industry was it got to where the bureaucracy around all the little nitpicking paperwork to do for testing was just bonkers. Like it turned into that was half your job was just you're going to sit in the office and you're going to upload stuff to Compliance Engine. And you go test one facility that had all these sub counts and sub panels. Guess what? Everyone had a different report, and the hospitals would change how they wanted to do stuff.
Oh yeah.
And so I said, you know what? I've got my NICET II. I can work anywhere. It's great on my resume. I'm stopping right there.
No,
I can service my accounts, and that's it.
I thought it was bad here, and because Performance had a division up in Washington. When I worked for them, they had this. Branch that was up there in Bothell, and those folks had jurisdictional requirements that were jaw-dropping. I mean, jaw-dropping.
Yes.
Because I have a Washington license too, and I was just like, holy cow. So,
you have to paint your back boxes red.
It's worse than that. Like this jurisdiction here, I'm just pulling it out of my butt, but, Seattle needs it this way, and Tacoma needs it that way, and Olympia has it this way, and Mount Vernon does it that way, and you're like, oh my God, really? You guys can't get on the same page at all, and none of them are. And I'm watching that slowly happen down here, where it's bad enough in Washington where you have to have an ELO 6 and you have to have a NICET II, and now you have to, if you're in Vancouver, you've got to jump through their hoops and get your endorsement for working in Vancouver, and then all these different things, all these different hoops you jump through. And the idea is that, by the time we get a technician who's jumped through all these hoops, they're super qualified, or they're really good at jumping through hoops and they can't find their ass with either hand, a GPS, and a map. So what have you gotten here?
Right.
Like I get it, but at the same point in time, you still got trunk slammers out there installing crap everywhere.
Right.
So we were following behind a trunk slammer here in Oregon, who installed at a school way out in the middle of BFE, and my own stepkid was working on a system, and he puts a beam detector in alarm, but can't get it to clear at all. And I So he calls me. He's like, dude, we've been here like an hour and a half trying to get this into clear. We cannot get it to clear. So I'm remotely driving him to go up behind where the beam detectors were wired and to pull a J-box apart and to pull the 24 volts off, because that is the one place I know where it was feeding. And sure enough, man, he pulled it off. The beam detector reset, cleared. We put it back together again. We wrote it all up. For 3 years,
wow,
we fought with that. I went back to the school. I said, look, we got to fix this. Yeah. I'll have the company install it, fix it. Well, how's that going to fix it? That's just one of the problems we got. We got 10 other problems here, you know what I'm saying? I'll come and fix it. This is a quote. No. We'll have the trunk slammers that put it in fix it, because they don't call them that.
Yeah.
And pretty soon you're just beating your head off the wall. So now you've got to train your technicians. Okay, when you put this thing in, go up here, pull it apart here, even though you shouldn't have to, because they won't just let me put it on resettable 24, which is why it's there. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's the stuff. That's you've got all these jurisdictional requirements, but you're trying to shoot a gnat with a shotgun. What the hell's going on here? Why don't you just think about how you've got yourself laid out, and then build on that? And I'm hoping that's changing, but now that I've narrowed my scope down to just the hill, I couldn't tell you. I honestly couldn't tell you.
It's a very interesting industry that we have all these requirements that are making it makes it more difficult to get a technician in the first place, even hired, because it's like, well, why should we hire you when you need this and you need this and you need this and you need this? So we're almost getting into the IT industry where you have to have a certification for this access control system to be any good at all. You can't call this tech support. You can't order parts. You have to be a special proprietary dealer, and you can't touch this fire panel unless you've got this certification. And so maybe 10 years ago, okay, Oregon was tough because you had to get the LEA and you had to have some experience. You had to be halfway decent at wire pulling and troubleshooting. But you could get someone off the street that knew halfway what they're doing, throw them in to do work, and they could make you money. Now it's gotten, like you were saying, we've got all these extra requirements that have built up as the manufacturers changed, as local jurisdictions changed. But we have, on the other side of the spectrum, we've got a bunch of the old timers who are fading out because they're retiring too soon. Because guess what? The industry seems to be split towards the really old guys and the really young guys. And so we need to get the young guys trained, but they've got all these hoops they got to jump through. And so
you've hit it right on the head, man.
So what's going to give first? Like, the companies are all screaming to get help. It's great for me because I can change companies once a year and get a fat raise, and great, that's wonderful. But at some point we get stressed because there's only so far we can go when all the parts are on back order and the customers are screaming at us, and we're like, you know what? You know, I'm fully aware that you waited 2 months to get your service call answered in the first place because we have 400 calls in our backlog. But there's only so much I can do because they just hired me 4 months ago, and all these problems happened before I got here.
So you're the interfacing person with those clients and your company. So you're like a clutch between that.
Yeah, and I'm just
between that and the technology. Now you're familiar with Astia, right?
Sure.
So I'm vaguely familiar with Astia and web apps, which Western had before that. When I got to PSI, they had one version of software called Sedona, and then they shifted over to Service Trade. So when we got Service Trade, I got a little bit more familiar with that. And that's 4 damn pieces of software in less than 8 years, right? That's just the dispatch and
in one company.
No, 2 companies,
Okay,
but that's just those. That's just that there. That's not the other stuff. It's not the database. That's not.
Yeah.
I was explaining to my apprentice today. I said, when I was a manager, the first time I was manager up at OHSU, and I had been an electrician for 8.5 years, and they said, "Oh, you'd be a great manager." Well, it was bat squeeze. So I went into it, and I got completely overwhelmed, and I was not prepared for what I was going to go into, and I I know there are people who could have handled it. I don't know where the hell they're at. I have no idea. I mean, I started off working like 100-hour, 120-hour weeks. And I couldn't put the oar in the water fast enough. I couldn't paddle fast enough. I couldn't work enough. And if you weren't going to consistently throw 100, 120-hour weeks at it, you weren't going to keep ahead. Mm-hmm. And at some point, you just get burned out because you're not making any more money. You know, they're forcing this change on you, and if your family is not prepared to deal with it, everything just begins to fall apart. So I determined that I went to this class, and the class said, "Look, how much time do you need to get your job done, like all of your job done?" And I needed 48 minutes. I just explained this to my apprentice this morning. I need 48 minutes is what I needed. That's all. Out of a 10 to 12 hour day, I needed 48 uninterrupted minutes. That was it to get it all done. And literally 48 minutes is what we calculated. I couldn't get 48 of uninterrupted minutes if I was sitting on the commode. It was impossible. It was impossible. Subsequently, every time I was in a supervisory management position after that, getting a block of time long enough to completely work one issue all the way through, impossible. Yeah. Impossible. Meetings, Teams, chats, emails, phone calls, people knocking on your door. Everything's it was constant interruption. And so the only time you could get work done was after everybody was gone. So now you're working until 8 at night. And I love people who can do that. I can't.
Yeah.
Especially if you've been in the military, because I've worked those hours for 6 months straight. Bat squeeze. I'm not in the military. I'm not putting my life on the line. I just want to work and go home. And so you get this mix of, am I really dedicated enough to get this whole job done, or is it going to kill me before I finally get to that point? And when I looked back and evaluated what was going on, I realized that there's all these inputs, all these things that are that you need to do. Mm-hmm. If you give every bit of you to do it, you'll probably be successful, but your home life won't. Mm-hmm. Other things will begin to suffer. Your dog won't know who you are, or your horses that you take care of, you haven't taken care of in 3 weeks, but your wife had to. You know what I'm saying? It's got to be this work-life balance, and that is key. And eventually, you do like I did. You really just toss your hands up in the air and go, "No, my work-life balance is out.
Yeah,
it's just out."
And I have done that, absolutely. That's what I did at Siemens. I was juggling the service work, and I was doing this big project, and it was like, okay, I'm not getting the support I need. I'm not getting paid enough. I'm out. And so you basically have to say, I can't apologize for that, you know. And so that's what and again, I'm going to come back. This is what I like about Stanley is I have that balance where I leave my house at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning most of the time, sometimes a little before. But it's most of the time, other companies I work for, I was on the job at 7, and so I was leaving my house at 6 because I live in McMinnville, you know, so everything's an hour commute. Doesn't matter where I am. I love the town because rent's cheap, the power's cheap. I can have my overhead really low and save all my money, and that's great.
It's a good location.
Yeah, and I love it for service work because I can go to the coast, I can go to Portland, I can go to Salem, and so I get done with work probably 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the late days. Some days it's 2:30, and I can just zip. I come home from Salem, and I'm home before 4. I can chill out, relax, play computer games. Girlfriend gets home, we relax, and I don't have to like stress over my job. Like I can't imagine being a supervisor manager today. You know, back in the other day, you just had to worry about your phone ringing or email. Now it's Teams. Now it's all these extra little things, and so John Walton was actually my manager at Siemens. Like he was the guy that hired me in. He lasted, I want to say, somewhere between 8 months to a year after I started, and he said, "You know what? I'm going to go back in the field. I can't deal with it." I
did the same exact thing.
And I'm looking at this like, okay, what's my future in the industry? Like, where can I go?
Well, what's unfortunate is that, and I'm not blaming anybody. It's not anybody's fault. The company needs somebody with those skill sets, and I'm thinking,
You have to know your...
Yeah, I have the skills. If I was single, no problem. No problem. But I'm not single.
Right.
And so I either need to be single or I will be single. One of the two. Well, you know, that's what's going to happen.
But you have to know your limits. You have to know who you are. And
that's that set of scales. Like to me, is my compensation equal to what you do here at what is it that you do here at NICET? You know, I take the goddamn thing to the engineers, right? I mean, it's got to be that balance. And if that balance is out, then you're out.
Yeah.
And I was talking to the CEO at PSI, and we still talk. I'm very good friends with all those guys there. And I said, I'm leaving this company to go ride a bicycle to work a couple of times a week, and I'm almost 60. Like, what the hell am I thinking?
Right.
And when I ride my bike up the hill, I love it. Like, I get up at 3, and I'm out there doing it, and it's like, I love this. I love this.
Right.
I get there. There's like 4 emails in my inbox. I had over 55,000 emails in 5 years at my last company. 55,000. I was like, that's 10,000 plus emails a year.
Yeah.
Who the hell's reading 10,000? Why am I getting 10,000? I cannot possibly read 10,000 emails in a year. Nothing you have to say is that critically important that it's good that I need to see it. So I could triage 100 emails in less than 30 seconds because you're CC'd on all this crap. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So yeah, you're exactly right. That whole scene of how you interface, what you do, the folks who do it well, and Charles would be a great example. Charles is a guy who's got his crap in the right sock. I don't know how the guy does what he does.
He's very focused.
He's very focused.
Yeah. And it's a little intimidating.
Like damn is intimidating.
You're like, man, this guy's wired a little differently than I am.
He's wired differently than anybody I've ever seen. And it's jaw-dropping to watch him because he really knows his shit. The CEO at PSA is the same way. Travis is the same damn way. The guy's wired in a way I can't imagine. I cannot imagine being wired that well.
One distinguishing factor that when I think of like interactions I had with Charles, it was what made him good in his position was that when I face a difficult situation with a customer, with a job, and I'm like, crap, what am I going to do in this case? Like, do I do this? Do I do this? And then I'm like, okay, you know what? I need to talk to my manager. I call up Charles, and he's like, oh, you need to do this. Bam. And he would just make the decision in a split second. And
it's almost always right.
Right.
Very rarely
exactly.
was it wrong.
And I was like, you know what? I didn't even think about that. You're absolutely right. We should do that. And it was the years of experience combined with the ability to think quickly and just condense the information that you were just handed in a heartbeat and spit out the correct answer. I mean, that you can't buy that.
When his emotional intelligence is one of the best I've ever seen. Both him and Travis, the guy who ran the show there.
You have to be able to read people.
Yeah. Oh my God. But they were absolutely stoic in how they dealt. And I'm over here going, "Bah, this is not it. This is just time to flip desks." And they're like, "Just calm the hell down."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "How can you do that?" And what was weird is that, like, if you're in the military, they teach you, especially in my experience in the Navy, when things went sideways, they taught you to deal with the issue right then and there of what you got to do. Make a snap decision, do the right decision, do what you got to do to get. Then when it's all done, you fall apart on your time, and that's exactly what would happen. We would keep it together, and when it was all said and done and we were safe, we'd go, bah, well, we'd just all fall apart. And everybody did the same damn thing.
Right.
And I thought, okay, and having read enough books on combat and stuff like that, and known how people who have been in it, that's exactly what happens. Is under fire, you either there and you're doing your best to keep it together, or you completely crack. You completely fall apart, and you never know how it's going to go until you hit that point. You know what I'm saying? And every time I thought, man, I think I could do this, I realized, no, not at all. No. Like, no, I know my limitations.
Yeah.
And if I bounce back and just take care of this thing and do it well, right? then that employer could get the benefit of me focusing on that thing and being very good at that. And that's it. Like, I don't need to be good at a million things. I just need to be good at a couple of things. And and it's okay. Like, that's what I've come to accept as I'm okay. I'm okay just doing what I do, go home, go do something else. You know what I'm saying? Like it's okay. It's okay to know where you fit in the scheme of things.
Right. Now, let me ask you something. I know you mentioned somewhere, I think one of your Instagram posts, you said you guys are looking for people that are in the union. Have you found anyone to interview that's currently in the union?
We'd have to talk to Gage, but yeah, he did. I think he was going to interview. We're going to set up somebody with IBEW to talk to them. Like, he's already talked to their. I don't know if it's a trainee agent or something.
For the most part, your podcast, your guests are pretty much all non-union side.
Yeah, but I have no bone to pick with them. I just. Sure. You know,
to me, so it's kind of interesting. So I've seen both sides of that. I spent
because you were in the union. I mean, you saw it
briefly. Yeah. So I spent a year at Salem Fire Alarm, and I spent 6-7 months at Dyna. So like, I dipped my toe in a little bit here and there. So just my perspective on being both sides, I feel like we're in two different worlds. It's very interesting how you have people that are diehard union, and that's all they're ever going to be, and you have people that are diehard hate the union, and it's like, so I'm ambivalent. I've seen both sides, and they're not that different, but there is a difference, and a lot of it is like mentality. So IBEW, I'm in the 270 because it's all. I'm McMinnville's just south of the border enough that it's in their jurisdiction.
So it's not 48.
Right. So basically, it to me it felt weird, and I'm going to use the term weird because that was just my honest my impression of it. First time you walk into the union, it's all about all these paperwork and rules, and you're on the books for 270, but then if you want to go to 48, you have to go up there and transfer your books or some deal, and then you take a call and you go to this company, but you don't always get a say in like where you go and what you're doing. It's just. So with Dyna, like, you're just a meat in the grinder. You're like, hey, you're a warm body and you're showing up, and they don't care what your experience is or what you've done before. Go put this, cable tray together and hang it up.
You should be proficient in everything across the board.
Right.
Because you've been trained for 5 years.
And they just tossed you around, do whatever you want to do, boom, boom, boom. Now, it was totally different, though, going to Salem Fire Alarm, because you were there to do a job, and like they would actually try to train you and treat you like a real employee. So that was like, but in both cases, the real weirdness is that there's an imbalance to me. What feels like is everyone in the union is equal. So the guy that just got his card yesterday is getting paid the same as the guy that's been there 10 years. So you're all the same. Well, that's great in some ways. It's but at the same time, I think what was out of balance was all your family members are on their insurance, and they get it for free. There's no premiums, nothing. That's fantastic. If you got 5 kids, they're all getting health insurance for free.
All right.
If you have no kids and you're not married, you don't get kickback any extra. It's like, it's kind of a use it or lose it kind of deal.
Right.
You get no paid time off. They kind of kick you like this little stipend, to use to save up, and that's what you spend if you have time off. But, so
it's a different world, isn't it?
It's a different world, yeah. And so I'm kind of on the fence. Like, yes, the union's a good thing. The union, when it originally started, we drove up the cost of labor. We gave people better rights, and I'm in favor of the union in principle, but it just felt like a cult. Like it was. So we had what they call a welcoming ceremony for the new inductions at 270, and it was like they had this pledge we read off, and it was like, I vow to hold up the values of the union and blah blah blah, and some crusty old timer that was probably 65 years old, he's up there. Hold this sacred, your brothers stand with you, and some of them died for these benefits, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just looking around going, these guys are nuts, But,
well, they take it very seriously.
Yes.
Because of and I get it, because there's only like 7% of the workforce is unionized.
Right.
So 93% is not. So most people have not experienced union. I've been in and out a couple of them. I'm in one now because there's one that represents us at OHSU. So
right.
I'm in one. I don't agree with everything they do, but I've been unrepresented and I've been represented, and I'll take the representation over the unrepresented, over the unrepresented. But I agree. I don't always agree with it. I don't always agree with some of the decisions made, but that's part of you've got to deal with what it is, not what it ain't.
Theoretically, everyone has a vote. You all kind of decide where the ship goes.
But the open pay scale is brilliant because when you come into a small company or any company at all, and you don't know what the hell this guy's making.
Right.
And you've been there for 5 years, and this guy just came out off the street. And this happened to me when I was working for Simplex. I'm teaching a guy how to work on a fire panel.
They're paying him more than you.
And he goes, I don't know if I could do this for, he blurted out what he's making an hour, and I just dropped the leads. I had a fluke up there, and I just dropped the leads and went, oh, shit. Really? I said, Joe, you're making $2 more an hour, and I got to teach you how to do my goddamn job. What the hell?
Right.
And when I went back to the management, they went, no, you came in at this rate, and we can't advance you. We don't have the mechanism in place to move your pay up to make you comparable because those rules don't exist. And I said,
you have to quit and come back.
Yeah, exactly. So I got to quit and come back. And this was years before it was when it was still a private company.
Right.
Before it was ever bought by Tyco. And so I was like, When I left and went to the Hill the first time, I got like a $6 an hour raise. I couldn't believe it. I was like in Fat City. Well, there were different rules up there. It was unionized. There were all these different things you had to do. But you basically knew where everybody's scale was. If you were a Tech 3, you knew what basically what their brackets were. Every company I worked for after I left the Hill, and then now that I'm back, their scales were, we have these bands, right? But depends on what was happening, where people were at, and of course all the technicians always talk, right? And you're not supposed to talk about pay. Well, that's the first thing people talk about. So you're like, well, this is a 800-pound gorilla in the room. Everybody's talking about, for Christ's sakes.
Right.
Okay.
And I think it's been very different. There's been a paradigm shift since the internet came around, and everyone's on Glassdoor and they're sharing.
Exactly.
And back in the day, it wasn't so easy. You had to kind of like, hey, buddy, what are you making these days? And it was all kind of touchy feely. And so this concept of you can be autonomous on the internet and just kind of you're just putting these reviews out and nobody really has to know who you are, and you can share information about wage and that kind of thing. That's sort of doing the job that the union was doing as far as equalizing people and keeping people educated. And so, I think, and I'm totally for the union. I absolutely agree that people like in Starbucks and Amazon, yes, they should be unionizing. We need to give people better living conditions, better treatment. It's outrageous that you take a half-hour break at Amazon and the 10-minute walk from your station there and back, that's a part of your break. So it's like, what? Amazon has billions and billions of dollars coming out their ears. They could treat the average person better.
But it ain't going to the employee.
Right.
It's going to somebody.
That's right.
Who's going to build some phallic-shaped rocket to fly to the moon. I get it.
Yeah.
But at the same point in time, and that's where you see the same thing I see. I see the pros and the cons.
Right. Which is better for our industry.
Which is better for the industry. Which is better for small companies, because I've run a small company, and when I ran a small company, when I owned my own company, I couldn't afford a union. I just couldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't. I did provide health care for all my employees. I did, I bought Kaiser. I offset most of those costs. I did what I could because I kind of lean that way in my political makeup. But it was one small blip, in a sea of blips.
Right.
It doesn't matter what the hell I did or thought.
I think the biggest reason, so again, there's not a huge difference in pay and benefits and so forth, union or non-union. It's kind of similar. There are some differences, but the biggest reason I went non-union and I stayed out was it was really hard to find a company that I liked in the union that wasn't doing all construction or they didn't have some, weird hang up or whatever. And so there was so many more choices outside the union where I could say, yes, I like the way these people do it. I want to work there. And I had that freedom just to go there and sign up, and I didn't have to jump through all the hoops.
Right.
So yeah,
you were free. You were independent. You're like an independent.
I'm very mercenary. That is literally the way I would describe myself. It's like, you know what?
I am electrical mercenary.
I am not loyal to any company because the only reason I'm there is for you to give me a paycheck. I don't care about your brand. I don't care about your whatever. It's just, I will do everything for your customers that I did for the other company as long as you treat me right. And that was it. So it comes down to personality.
Well, I think it would be. I think it's an open invitation to get IBW either 48 or 270 here to talk. Yeah. Give me your side of it, for Christ's sakes, because there's nothing wrong with I blunt asked me, so I would have an ask me guy here, but at least talk about it, and then and do talk about some of the pros and some of the cons.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I know we're going to close it down here a little bit. When I was working for Simplex, I ran sideways with some guys from OEG?
Sounds right.
It was either OEG or I don't know, one of those big, huge companies, right? EC. I think it was OE. Anyway, this was years ago. We were working on a place that's no longer in business, and I came in the wrong goddamn gate. Hmm. I came in the wrong gate, didn't know it. I was actually going from one side of the factory to the other and happened to come in the gate. Oh my God. Oh my God. I've ran into that, and these guys they went crazy. They went crazy on me. And you push all my buttons, I'll react. I mean, I'm just like any other, idiot. And I just said, oh my God, if you don't shut up, I'm going to drive in and out of this goddamn gate 7 more times. Okay, stop. Put your big boy pants on, pull yourself up, and go to work. And stop worrying about who came in what damn gate. Mm-hmm. Okay? And honestly, it was like, and I had one of the superintendents pull me up and said, you can't do this. You can't talk to our people this way. And I said, all you got to do is go back to work. You've made your point. Mm-hmm. Okay? Don't keep here and pummel me. Don't beat me up over something so trivial. Yeah. Stop. Okay? At some point, we have to literally get over ourselves. And what are we here to do? We're here to fix stuff and wire it, install it, and put it in. Okay? Yes, you made your point. Everybody can now. You want a cry towel? Come on, enough. And it literally was. I mean, I thought, I had another one when I worked for another place where one of the guys, said, look, you shouldn't be doing this work because this is another union, and I said, I know your bylaws better than you, and if you don't like what I'm doing, grieve it. Well, I can't grieve it. If I grieve it, I'll be blacklisted. And I went, so then the idea is that you're going to come pressure me because you don't have the stones to go grieve this. Well, I'm going to continue to do this work because, homie, I got to eat. And that's what it boiled down to. So like I said, I've got a love-hate sort of relationship with some of them, but in my experience, it's been hot or cold. It's very, very rarely has it been right down the middle. Like, God, this really feels good. I'm either getting my ass beat, or I'm chasing somebody down the street. Right. I literally came out of a Home Depot with a 4-foot pipe wrench over my, or 2-foot pipe wrench over my shoulder. I just bought it, and ran into 2 guys, one from each of the 2 unions. One's a mechanical union, and they said, "What are you doing with that?" Because they could see my uniform, see the van of the company I worked for.
You're not a plumber.
You're not using that, are you? And I went, "Yeah, I'm using that. I also test backflow." What the heck? Why are you doing? Why are you conflict with me in the middle of a parking lot at a Home Depot? I know how to use the wrench for other things. Jeez. So anyway, you get me all riled up, man.
Thanks for listening to the Half Watt Podcast. We always want to hear from you, and we encourage you to email us at halfwattpod@gmail.com with questions or even your own stories. Funny, crazy, or praiseworthy, we want to hear it all. You can follow us on Instagram at halfwattpod to stay up to date on our feed. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and share us with a friend, the best way to help us grow. The Half Watt Podcast is a production of Now Hear This Studios.